Okay, hey everybody, how you doing? And welcome to episode number 147 of the John Riley Project. And today I'm very pleased to have as my guest Cindy Sytsma, candidate for Poway Unified School Board. Cindy, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you this afternoon, John?
Great. We got a chance to get to know each other, did a little phone call about a week ago, scheduled this, and I just love having political candidates, especially local political candidates here on the podcast. So, the voters can get to know you. We can go as long as we want talking about the issues, and I think we can have some fun tonight or this afternoon. How's it going? I mean, you got the campaign going. I visited your website. How is it out on the campaign trail right now? What are some of the things that you're hearing from potential voters?
Uh, so far I've heard nothing but a lot of encouraging words and support for my willingness to do this in light of so many hot topic issues right now. I've been getting, you're still willing to do this, and absolutely, I am. It's been a quiet summer, and with school, the first day of school is now nearing. It's been pushed back a little bit, but I anticipate things are going to start to get a little bit hotter in terms of the conversations, and I'm excited to go out there and have hopefully engaging conversations, and just keep our district going in a positive direction.
Well, I think, all of us that live here in the community, a lot of us live here because of the school district, because we value the schools and we value obviously our children. I speaking for myself, my wife and I moved here to Poway right after we were married and before we had children, because it's such a great place to raise a family. So maybe let's get started before we start getting into the heavy, hardcore issues. Tell me a little bit about you personally, about, your family, where you grew up, your background in education, your career. Give me a thumbnail sketch of who Cindy Sytsma is.
Sure, my pleasure. Well, like you and your wife, my husband and I chose to move to Poway a little over 18 years ago, and kids were not even on the horizon yet.
Right.
He's from the Midwest, and I'm a local girl. I was moved to Penasquitos when I was 4, and went all the way through Poway schools, graduated from Mount Carmel. And so he leaned on my expertise in terms of, if we're going to have kids someday, where should we land? And being that he's from the Midwest, he wasn't quite comfortable with what his comfort level was. He's not a city boy. We were living in the city, just about 5 miles out of downtown, and he needed to go someplace that felt a little bit more like home. And I knew the area, so it was definitely a compromise to move to Poway, being that I grew on the other side of the 15. Back then, there was only 2 high schools, so there was Mount Carmel and there was Poway High. So I moved into Titan territory, as my friends.
You're a Sun Devil, right?
I'm a Sun Devil, yes.
It's okay. We still love you here.
I own it now. I'm good.
Okay.
I don't know that I don't know that I'll ever completely bleed green, but it'll be red and green someday.
Well, if you're elected, you have to be neutral, right? You can't
either way. When we are a year out from stepping onto a high school campus with our child, and
okay.
I'm in a good place. It's amazing how many of my high school buddies are not that way. It's still there's still very much those lines. So, but anyway, I'm thrilled to make Poway my home. I I love being in the foothills and hearing the animals, the wild animal at night, and that there's horse buttons at the crosswalk. And it definitely, I realize I'm definitely more of a country and the city girl than I thought I'd ever be growing up. So we're really happy that we made Poway our home.
We're the city in the country, so it's perfect.
Exactly. So, and I like that everything's close by. We don't have to go very far to get what we need and for entertainment. But like I said, I grew up in the area. I've lived here in this area almost my entire life. I was very fortunate in, I feel like Poway Unified really prepared me for college. And I was very successful in my college track. And I'll circle back to why I feel like Poway Unified really, really prepared me for that as an educator myself. I earned a bachelor's degree from Fresno State in criminology. And I had the unique opportunity to have some internships that dealt with gangs. I worked with the sheriff's department. I worked with kids who were either runaways or abused. And as a young adult myself, I fell very quickly into the mentorship role and learned how to be a really good listener. And I also earned my certificate in mediation so that I could help victims who had been victims of various crimes. And I got to go on to crime scenes and just be there for the victims while the sheriff's department was doing their thing. So that as a young adult, it was very eye-opening and empowering to just be a hand there. From there, I was hired on as a correctional deputy for the San Diego Sheriff's Department, moved back down here. Where I ended up moving back down here, I ended up meeting my husband, who was in the Marines at the time. And I worked for a couple of years in the sheriff's department, and I just, in the back of my head, it was, I didn't have enough education yet. I wanted more. So, and when I was in high school, I was privileged enough to be a teacher's aide. And it was one of my favorite times in high school. I worked with the kids with moderate to severe disabilities. So I decided while I was working for the sheriff's department to go to Cal State San Marcos. I got dual teaching credentials in both general education and special education.
Oh, right on.
And shortly thereafter, I ended up having to leave the sheriff's department because it was too difficult to do my student teaching and work the 12.5-hour shifts that were required at the time. So it was, and it was okay. My path was pointing me in a different direction. I moved right on to completing my master's degree in education and focused on gangs in middle schools in San Diego County. I was able to interview a lot of my own students with parent permission, of course, because I had IRB approval. I worked in Logan Heights for a couple of years where many of my kids were either in gangs, they'd have family member in gangs, and the community itself was a closed campus because of the community had a high crime
That's incredible. I mean, they're recruiting gang members in middle school.
Yes.
Wow, it starts early.
Yes, it does. Else. And I moved from Logan Heights to Tierra Santa And I taught in middle school there, and I was surprised, given that it was it was more of a bedroom community, at how much the kids were knowledgeable of gang affiliation, even in Tiarasana.
Wow.
And it was also a military community too there. A lot of families that moved in and out. After I completed my master's degree, we still weren't quite ready to have kids, so I decided to go ahead and pursue my PhD in human services. And I was teetering back and forth on which career I really wanted to follow. So I had one foot in each camp. I ended up getting my PhD in human services with a background in criminal justice.
Wow.
And then I ended up writing my dissertation on No Child Left Behind. I did an archival study on graduation, suspension, and expulsion rates on all high schools that were in existence in San Diego County at that time. And that was about 12 years ago that I did that study, because I was very passionate about what they were doing in the schools at the time. I was working in San Diego Unified, and the teaching to the test was a conversation that all teachers were having. I was still in my 20s at the time, and listening to my colleagues about how the direction that teaching was going, they felt like their hands were tied in a lot of ways, and that kids weren't getting the exposure to the programs and the clubs that they so need to diversify their background and their making them more well-rounded. That was San Diego Unified. So as we were researching, where to live, and I was having conversations with folks that I knew up in the Poway Unified area, I was thrilled to hear that Poway Unified still very much embraced the programs and the clubs to give kids those outlets beyond the reading, writing, and arithmetic. So it's another one of the reasons how we ended up here. I want my kids to have that exposure to beyond just the hardcore academics. Being an academic
here are great. I mean, sports, robotics. I mean, there's just a litany of clubs that they can get involved in. I mean, it's a great culture here for our kids to grow up. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, being an academic myself, obviously I know and I see the value in all of that, but there's more to the individual than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. So I started as a special ed teacher in San Diego Unified. I worked with students who had mild, moderate disabilities, moderate, severe disabilities, emotional disabilities, were in and out of juvenile hall. And I was a special day class teacher. I became a department chair, which had a lot of administrative responsibilities for those educators out there who are department chairs. And then I became a resource teacher. As a resource teacher, I did more push in, less pull out, which meant I was in the general ed environment and I worked with all the kids. Obviously, I had my caseload of those who I had to make sure that those kids were meeting their goals and their benchmarks. But I worked with all the kids, and all the kids knew that. It was a joy to be able to work with all of them and to work in all of the areas of academics, and not just the 2 courses that I was specifically assigned to teach, and the rest of the time I was pushing. And while I was there, I noticed that the number of students who struggled with reading was significant. So I took additional training through the Learning Resource Center, and I developed a reading center at the middle school. I did the Linda Mood Bell training. For educators out there, they'll know what Linda Mood Bell training is. And I successfully helped to bring a lot of kids who were significantly behind reading to reading much closer to grade level. And I left the middle school. I was recruited by my former principal, who was opening up an alternative high school for kids where maybe the traditional track wasn't the best route for them. It was for high school, the kids were there 3 days a week doing their academics. The other 2 days a week, they were at internships.
Oh, nice.
And she needed a special ed teacher to create and run this program at this alternative high school. So I got to be that person. It was perfect timing for me because I had just entered into the doctorate program. So I didn't have to be on campus 2 days a week because the kids were not there. So 3 days a week I worked with the kids, and the other 2 days a week I was working on my doctorate degree.
Oh, perfect.
So that's my educational background. After I graduated, or actually shortly before I graduated with my doctorate degree, I knew that I really wanted to get my foot in at the university. So I applied as an adjunct. On top of finishing my degree and working at the school, I became an adjunct at National University. I started picking up classes there. I worked in the School of Education. So I was working with up and coming new teachers. I taught the courses, and I was doing some field supervision. After a couple of years of working as an adjunct, they brought me in one day and asked if I wanted a full-time job. So for the last 16 years, I've been working as a professor at National University. Mm-hmm. One of the requirements as a professor, well, actually, we had 3 main criteria that we were responsible for: teaching, service, and scholarship. The teaching kind of goes without saying. I had to teach my course load every year. Our service was to the university. I had to sit on a variety of different committees and serve the university. And our scholarship, we are required to continue to write and publish and do presentations. And that was one of my favorite parts is I got to research in areas that interested me most. Most of them revolve in the area of education, promoting, looking at gender gaps to social injustice in the classroom, kids who have parents that are in prison, a wide range of subject matter on kids and education. I've traveled all over the world to be able to do presentations and continue to research with colleagues. I ended up developing a master's program with an emphasis. It was juvenile justice with an emphasis in special education. There was a significant number of studies that have been done that the number of kids that are in our detention facilities have some kind of learning disability or other disabilities, and those numbers are not getting any lower, unfortunately. So we wanted to be able to offer a program to bring together teams of professionals, educators, community members, law enforcement, to have a program that brought them together to, one, help teachers understand, kids that are going into the detention facility and having to work with law enforcement. Law enforcement definitely needed to have a better understanding of when they're identifying these kids, that some kids aren't able to read the officer, and they react simply because their social cues are off.
Right.
So with that program, it wasn't doing so well in the School of Education. So because I have unique credentials, they decided that it might be a better fit with the other social justice programs. So the program, along with myself, was transferred over to professional studies, where we gave it a good fight, but the university was starting to take some different turns, and we ended up having to teach out the program before it really took off. So I've been teaching classes on juvenile justice and criminal justice for the last seven years. Again, I do a lot of course writing, curriculum development, rewriting of courses. I've taught in different online platforms, which definitely was to my advantage and my children's advantage. And over the last few months, is my comfort level is goes without saying when it comes to online platforms.
Well, can we take that as, let's say, a jumping off point to talk about online education? Because, you know, school's about to start, and, you know, we're dealing with COVID, and I know the school district was considering a plan to have all the students go into the classroom. There was another plan to have all the students to be online. Now there's sort of a hybrid, I guess, where families can choose one or the other. I don't know if they can choose a mix of the two. I don't recall. But I'd be interested in your thoughts on online education, what you know about it, and how you think your skill there might apply to some of the challenges that Poway Unified is facing.
Sure. Well, so the direction that the school district is going right now, as of an email we received, I believe Friday afternoon, the families have a choice, and we just did our family commitment form, that if you are wanting to have your child in person, if you're looking at the virtual academy, or if you're looking at some other alternative charter schools, homeschool, you will have the option to, at the semester, make a change. If you're ready to make a change, if your family dynamics needs the change, but there has to be the room there. The current model for on campus is going to be morning and afternoon sessions. It looks like they're going to do their best to try to make sure that family units have the same time. I only have 2 children, so I can only imagine, you know, if you've got lots of, you know, more than 2 kids,
it'd be hard. Really
and you've got some, you know, some in morning and some in afternoon, and obviously different campuses. So that's definitely going to be an uphill battle to try to make sure that they've got all of that coordinated with like 36,000 families, and the majority of those families, there's sibling units within. So those are the choices that they have. Where do I stand with online learning? Obviously, I teach it, so I'm very comfortable with it. And I know it's definitely not for everyone. I've worked with adults in the online platform, and it's not for all adults. You really you've got to be organized. You've got to have good time management. And it's not always the right fit for everybody. It's for adults, it's a way to balance family life, work life, and get a degree or change careers. But so many struggle with that, and they still require the instructors to kind of give them that handheld nudge on, you know, this is how to read the class. I've always made myself available. I've got, you know, stellar reviews from students from over the years. They always felt, you know, I was very approachable and willing to, you know, I can't do the work for them, but I'm there to advocate and guide them. If they've wanted that second chance, like I completely screwed up, where we learn from our mistakes. If they come forward and ask me, can I have a second chance to resubmit this? I'm willing to work with students. If you've got emergencies, I'm willing to work with them. But the communication, I feel when you lose the face-to-face, it goes down for adults.
Mhm.
I mean, I've spent the majority of my adult career on the computer, and I consider myself really good at communication, but things slip by. Our teachers, our K-12 teachers, our preschool through 12th grade teachers, they went into the profession because they wanted to work with kids.
Right.
And what I've heard from conversations with parents is that some teachers are really savvy with the online environment,
Mhm.
and others that's not their training. Their level of knowledge is kind of where I would say the kids are probably have more expertise than a lot of the teachers. And I don't say that to criticize. We have
No,
amazing teachers in our district, but
you're
they
praising the children.
wanted to go. I've had to call my own kids, and with this Google Chromebooks, Google Docs.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I have a teenage daughter, because it's new to me.
It's all right. It's okay. Yeah. It's all
Right,
good.
exactly. But we have to take this as an opportunity to learn from each other. It's not easy. We're going to grow and evolve with this, because it's looking like, even though the school year date has been pushed back to September 2nd, there's a pretty high probability that we're all going to start virtually, regardless if you
Yeah.
chose online or not. And at least we've had a little exposure now. So
Mhm.
we need to be a support for those families that are brand new to this, that have kindergarten kids coming in, or maybe they're moved from somewhere where it was very small and they didn't have to necessarily, they were still able to keep their on-site classroom. So I don't know if the platform is going to change, but I offered assistance when we first put our kids online back in March. I reached out and said, I'm an expert at this. I'm very comfortable with online. If you want help, I'm still there. And I reached out. I've got some parents who are like, can you take my kid come the fall? Can you work with them? Because I have to go back to work. I can't,
Yeah. I'll bet.
So I feel very fortunate that I work from home, so I can toggle between work and supporting my kids when they get stuck, and remind them, take a lunch break, take a recess break.
Mm.
No, the screens are off limits right now. I can still do that. And but there's so many families that are not.
Yeah.
It is we will get through it. But we're all going to have to, be a support for, the teachers and the kids all over the place. And we're resilient. So I know we'll get there.
Well, I think it's interesting that you have this background, because this is an area where I think Poway Unified is still figuring it out. It seemed that, no one expected this COVID crisis to hit. And, it took them a little bit of time to kind of spin up their online program. And I would imagine that some of the people at district headquarters were probably pretty busy over the summertime getting ready for
Sure.
online. But to your other point, I think it's interesting. Yes, some students, it's not for everyone, but some students can really, really thrive in an online environment.
Yes.
Other students really need that face to face and kind of having their hand held. And it's kind of nice that, at least in this environment, parents have a choice. Now, obviously, they're going to be choosing sometimes based on their family logistics requirements, because, mom and dad work and they got to figure out how to do that. But hopefully, some families are able to choose based on what's going to make the most sense for their child, to get the best possible education. But this is tricky times. I mean, we're learning as we go. And even if you have a student that really wants to be in a classroom environment, it's still kind of shaky what's going to happen. But I agree with you. I think it's going to start off all online, and then who knows what the future is. I think they're going to kind of take it as it comes.
Yeah, I will forever remain optimistic.
Yeah.
Uh, but because that's all I really have to lean on. I mean, I like everybody else. I have my day that I just want to complain, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, I feel better. I got it off my chest, and now we just have to move forward.
Right. Yeah, that's all good. You know, it's interesting you mentioned that the school district is giving students the opportunity to go to a charter school as opposed to going to one of the traditional public schools. How many charter schools do parents have a choice to pick from?
Oh,
Is there like a
the
list?
you'd be surprised. I haven't looked at the numbers in quite a while, but even when I was teaching in San Diego Unified, the age of parents shopping for classrooms was becoming a thing, which was,
Right.
we didn't have that. You went to the school that you were zoned for, and a
Yeah.
question. But research shows that you can't take a round peg and force it in through a square hole. And being a special educator, I get that. Every student has an individualized education plan, and your general ed classrooms, the teacher's approach is to teach to basically the middle ground. They do their assessments in the very beginning, and then they give it their best to challenge those kids who need the more challenging curriculum put in front of them. And then there's the kids that are delayed and just have a heart. They show up every day, they give it their best effort, but they're just constantly trying to keep up with the other kids in their classroom, academically, socially. And those are the kids that really need that one-on-one attention. When you have a 25-to-1 or 35-to-1 ratio, it's really hard. And it's to so many teachers, at least in this district, teachers are blessed with parent volunteers who are willing to come in and do small group. I've been one of those volunteers every single year, to work with those small groups, to pull out. Being a credentialed teachers loved having me there, because they didn't have to be present with me, because I've had that training and I was cleared. But you want to see each one of those kids grow and feel successful. And even if it's just the tiniest little aha moment makes what you're doing so worthwhile.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think, speaking for myself, I can point to certain times in my educational history where a teacher opened up my eyes to certain things, and my life took, it was like an inflection point. I went down a new pathway and learned new things because of being, those teachers enlightening me. So that's big.
Right. And it could have just been the teacher that really made you feel welcomed in the classroom, because you didn't necessarily get that at home every day. You were kind of had to stand on your own, and the classroom is the place that you spend a third of your childhood. A third of So just to have that adult know that you look forward to seeing that person that's just going to give you that hug or that high five. And academically, there might not have been the growth, but socially, you've got the love that you needed right then and there. And that carries with you forever. So where we go from here, every day seems to be different. We're all following what, what the CDC says. We all need to do our parts so that we can get our kids back into the classrooms full time.
Well, parents, you see a lot of the chatter on Facebook. A lot of parents are rightfully, worried, concerned. I've seen some criticism of our superintendent because she doesn't have a plan, but I think it's hard to plan. It's such an uneasy time. Things are very fluid. So it says, yeah, we're going to figure it out as we go. If you don't mind, let me jump into a different area. I was reading on your website that you had done some substitute teaching at Garden Road. And while you were there, you said that you witnessed some of the disrepair in the buildings, and you had made a comment about the bond measure. And, obviously that came before the voters in March and it failed. I'm curious to know, number one, what did you see personally at the school on campus that needed significant maintenance? And what are your thoughts on the bond measure and the right way to go forward to do those repairs across the entire school district?
Okay. Well, Garden Road is one of the older schools, and I've spent a fair amount of time on Twin Peaks. So those are the two campuses that I'm most familiar with. And with my kids in sports, I do get to see some of the external buildings, but I can't speak to each school, as in I have not been a strong presence on all of them. I've been in every single classroom at Garden Road, many at Twin Peaks, and a lot of patch jobs. A lot of mold, chunks of ceiling that are, sometimes coming down. The yard itself, in the heat, the kids don't have a lot of options for where to stay out of the heat, and then the juggle of, making sure that, first and foremost is their safety and their health always.
Right.
Exposure to heat, equipment that's breaking down, and they don't have the funding to replace those things. Having been very involved with both the PTA and the foundation, my husband's been the foundation chair. The Garden Road in particular was Title I, lost Title I because the federal government adjusted what constituted a Title I school. So Title I funding was kind of what a lot of schools was the driving force between a lot of schools having a foundation. PTAs, the way fundraising worked for PTAs is money in, money goes out. It has to be spent on the kids, on the families that help to raise those funds. The difference with a foundation is that the funds, they could build their funds. If they see, oh, we really need some new computer equipment because the computer lab has like 1995 computers in there. There's broken chairs. There's, we've got 2 broken windows. They could, that's where the foundation can hold that money. Right. Or a PTA could not. So the PTA is the service arm, and the foundation is the fundraising arm at so many schools. So the I've been to all of the meetings in turn, that involve those, that involved, the town halls at the schools, and what does our school need? And it's a concerted effort to try to raise those funds. The school district is only able to give X amount of dollars per school, and it's equitable across, but so that only goes so far, and then the PTAs and the foundations have to do their part to fundraise to help fill those gaps.
And that'll vary by school, based on the affluence of the people in those neighborhoods.
Definitely.
Mhm.
I can speak to, Garden Road runs a very small budget, and we feel like we provide a lot of great programs for the kids. We're able to put new books, current books in the library, help buy new technology when it's needed. We just had a new science lab put in last year. So, helping offset those costs. And we run on a very small budget of, maybe about $12,000. I could be off a little bit. And then I'm familiar with another school in Poway where much more affluent. I had the opportunity to, through kids, meeting a PTA president that oversaw one of the schools. They have a 6-figure PTA budget,
Yeah.
and which is,
It's a big difference.
10 times what we had at Garden Road. So having been a huge part of the fundraising arm at Garden Road, I feel like those are conversations that I feel very comfortable in going on to other schools and seeing what do they need help with, because we know that I'm a homeowner, and there's constantly repairs that need to be done here. And I only have 4 people that live in my household. You have campuses where everything is being, you have tons of hands manipulating, going in and out of doors, hundreds of kids and adults and volunteers, and things break down. And it's not in the individual school's budget, let alone the school district budget, to take care of the repairs that need to happen. It's my understanding that the gym at Poway High is the original gym.
Yeah, it's in pretty bad shape.
Yeah, I haven't been there.
Mm-hmm.
I as I've already mentioned, I went to Mount Carmel. I was a swimmer. And when my daughter was doing water polo and she was swimming at Poway High, I'm like, the pool still has the same little Mars that I saw when I was a kid and came to Poway High and had to swim in their pool. So, that's decades that these things, they have to balance, the kids have to be educated. So that's first and foremost, is, they have to pay the teachers, and that's a significant chunk of the budget. And then there's all the other stuff that goes along with it, the materials, and but it's a juggling act. And I know that the bond, which widely known, it didn't pass, and what's going to happen going forward, I don't know. Those are right now, behind closed door conversations, but I think they've got bigger things that they're concerned with right now, like getting school started. But
my hunch is that before COVID, I think they were probably going to have it on the ballot in November, since it failed in March, and they were going to keep coming back. But yeah, the COVID thing threw everything, a curveball. But it is interesting, you talking about the pool still having, the things that you recognized decades ago. It's interesting that we had the $1 billion bond, and that didn't fix the things that we really, a lot of things that needed repair. Then on top of it, the school district has a $400 million a year budget. They get $400 million a year that flows in. That, to me, maintenance, I always thought, should be in the regular budget. Like, a bond made sense to me if you were building a new school. But if you were just like replacing ceiling tiles or repairing a leaking roof or a broken air conditioner, you would think that could come out of the $400 million a year annual budget. But yeah, everyone wants a slice of that pie. There's a lot of competition for those dollars.
It does. I mean, the previous bond, everybody knows it was a bad deal. And I know this current board and administration is, you know, trying to pave a new path forward, um, and do right. And it's
Mhm.
hard because people don't want to put out more money. Um, it, it's it's a juggling act. What's going to happen? I don't know. I hope to be a part of that conversation. Um, I I consider myself, I mean, at home, very successful in running our budget, and I never overextend us. Uh, to take a loan is like, okay, we can
Mhm.
do this, and this is what we can put out each month, and I want the loan paid off this quickly because I don't want that weighing on our shoulders.
Right.
I have a Girl Scout troop, which I'm not the treasurer, but I have to make some decisions with regards to that budget. And I maintain total transparency with the parents of my troop as well as the girls because it's their money. Um,
Mhm.
the things that we do with that money directly impacts them. It doesn't impact me. I'm just the leader, but you know, to I've been teaching them about how to run a budget. Uh, I'm going to venture a guess that most of us have made poor decisions at one point in our life, financially poor decisions
Yeah.
that
I can say I have, certainly.
we've had to learn from those mistakes,
Yeah.
and hopefully we don't make that same mistake again.
Right.
But to run the budget, you know, I'm talking about a family or a, you know, a
Mhm.
decent sized troop for this area, you know, to looking at the budget for a school district where you've got thousands of families relying upon those decisions, and everyone's going to have their own opinion. It's important to listen and to respect those opinions, and to um, ultimately you're not going to make everyone happy, but to uh, make it well known why you're going to have to make the decision that you have to make and be transparent about what's happening,
Mhm.
um, with that movement. And while a percentage of the voters, parents in your area are still not going to like it, hopefully you at least gain their trust and respect, saying that you're standing behind, and being transparent in your decisions, and there's a respect that can at least remain
Mhm.
intact.
Well, you talk about transparency on your website, and I think that's wonderful, because we're talking about the bond and the $1 billion bond, and there was an erosion of trust. When the $1 billion bond was passed, and that was what, like 10 years ago, and I think embracing transparency is the way to rebuild that public trust, and
Mm.
um, and I think you making that. I read your roadmap on your website, and you made that a focal point of being transparent. Um, I think that's critical. Explaining why you vote the way you vote, and um, you know, having, how should I say, just being an open book. They always say what sunlight is the best disinfectant. So I like that about your campaign, is the embracement of transparency, not just as uh, not just as a throwaway phrase, but as something that you legitimately believe in.
um, Wholeheartedly.
Um, let's bounce around here. A couple of other things to talk about. Again, like on your roadmap, you talked about a number of topics. One of them we already touched on, which is the fundraising and the PTA, and um, I actually want to go back to that. I want to talk about one more thing. Does it ever strike you as odd that, you know, again, we have a $400 million a year budget, and the PTA and the teachers are always like begging just to have school supplies for the classrooms. Some things that should be, you would think, would be really basic things in a budget, but yet they're outside the budget. And we, as parents, as volunteers, we have to fill in the gaps. Um, how do you make that all work? Because you've got, the need for, paying everybody, all, paying for their salaries and their benefits and their pensions. You've got the need for all the school supplies, the need for maintenance. I saw on your website, you're a big supporter of having more art and music and drama and PE in the classroom. That's great. But how do you make it all fit in that budget? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not going to speak to the bond anymore.
Okay.
Just because we don't know where that's going.
Right.
But I don't know the line item budget that the school district runs on. It is for the schools to have to bridge those gaps, and many of them have done that successfully or fairly successfully, and the parents seem to enjoy that sense of community,
Oh yeah, for sure.
that they're playing a big role in contributing to their children's education, whatever that looks like. Some, it's just making sure their child gets to school each day. The 400 million plus budget that it takes to run a school district, it's a daunting task. I can only imagine. I've had small conversations about, smaller budgets at different levels. You have to prioritize,
Right.
and we
Exactly.
learn that, hopefully we impart that on our children on how to make financial decisions on a small level, and we build with it. And there's the opportunity, I know, for partnerships to help fill those gaps with the local businesses who right now they're struggling. But there's a way to, if you list the business at your school, if that business is able to give a little bit of a contribution to the school that they are with, that's within their area, it's a win-win, because every little bit
Oh yeah.
helps. The funding that is required to run so many different things within our district, a lot of the basic supplies no longer fall under the general budget either. It kind of falls on the parents,
Hmm.
and all these other small arm businesses that do these fundraisers and donations to make sure that kids have their necessary supplies. It's the budget is directly controlled whatever Sacramento is willing to, is able to contribute, whether it's throw out a number, $12 a student per day, or
Hmm.
I don't know the exact number in my head because it definitely changes, but attendance is critical, and there's the whatever they're able to contribute to the general budget, and then there's the constant dipping into the budget that throws every district for a loop, that forces them to have to think of other creative ways to fill that financial gap. And we definitely do not stand alone. I can't think of any districts out there that are sitting in the black right now comfortably.
No, no, yeah, not now.
So yeah, and we're a good sized district. We're not a small district. And we've got an incredibly diverse district as well.
Hmm.
I definitely don't have all the answers, and I'm not going to even pretend to, but I can comfortably say that when if I'm fortunate enough to, be elected, I'm a researcher. I've got a long, long history of that, and I don't make quick decisions. I take the facts and I look at everything in front of me, and sometimes it comes to some really hard decisions. Hopefully those hard decisions don't involve someone losing their job, because that is the hardest decision to have to make, and I definitely would not want to be in that position. But that's unfortunately reality.
It is. It's an interesting situation. I mean, because the school district, because of COVID and everything else, had to seriously deplete the reserves. And and it's kind of questionable what the student census count's going to be, which affects revenue. This is all part of everything's in motion. It's hard to figure this out, but it's going to be a major challenge, for you, if you're elected, for the existing school board members to kind of stabilize things financially just because of COVID alone. Then you have the separate issues of the fundraising and the repairs, the Measure P issues that were brought forward. But let's move on. Just a couple of other things. Is it okay? Do you have a little bit more time? We can go a little
I'm good.
further. Okay, good.
I'm good. Yes.
Well, so let's talk about you touched on it a little bit, but I think this is a good topic to explore. Is the need for special education, and for we have children with disabilities, and I know that's a big part of you talk about it in your website. Give me a little bit of a sense of what you believe the priorities are, and the things how you see the school district working with those families and those children.
Yeah. So I've special education is, of my diverse professional educator experience, my true passion is definitely with kids with exceptionalities, and the unique ways in which they learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's through touch, through sight, through tangibles in front of them, small group, it's with peer buddies. I've been fortunate over the last few years to substitute quite a bit in the autism classrooms at Garden Road, which allowed me a unique perspective into my background. Initially was not in autism. It was with learning disabilities. And children with autism, the way they view the world is different, and it's beautiful. And with all these kids, I mean, every child is unique and has their own special talent in which they need to approach the world. But I have always found that it sometimes it's a whole lot harder working with kids that have very diverse, unique learning needs, and they just get that little bit of a success, the aha, the expression in their face, and you're good for the rest of your school year. It was that one little moment, and it's harder. I've worked in general ed, and a lot more kids get it more quickly in the general ed environment, but it's those special ed kids that the bonding that happens is just on a whole different level. I have, as I've mentioned, my Girl Scout troop, that I've got a couple of girls. They're all going into 8th grade, working on their silver projects, which is a big deal in the Girl Scouting world.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of girls right now that are looking at building sensory boards for kids who are autistic.
Oh,
So it's exciting to see that I am able to, in a very small way, uh, expose these kids in a positive way, and they will have a very positive outlook on how to approach a variety of individuals with diverse communication needs. I could go on and on about some of the other projects that they're working on, but there's a couple that are really standing out to me, and that's one of them. That they are right now they're trying to partner with a school or with a group, and you got to know what the needs of those kids are, because every single one is different. You can't assume that this is going to work for all of them, because it's not. You go into those classrooms, and
yeah.
the sensory walls and the manipulatives, when they get frustrated, what's going to work for one is not going to work for another. That other might frustrate another child, and to find that balance every day is a new adventure in the classroom. And I've developed a huge amount of respect and love for working in this environment, where I go home and the stories that I have, it's like exciting. And I mean, it's definitely, I don't know, I'm very passionate about being in the classroom with those kids is definitely lights up my day. And I feel blessed that that having been a professor at National University for the last 16 years, that service to the community is required of us. And I get to go out there and work in the classrooms and volunteer with my kids and continue to learn and grow and nurture, and hopefully be a positive role model for kids of all ages and backgrounds and needs. It's what keeps me going every day.
Right on. Yeah, it's interesting because there are a lot of families here in our school district who have children with special needs. And my understanding, I mean, I don't know this in any sort of detail, but my understanding is that Poway does a pretty good job at it. And so it attracts some families that move here because of it. But of course, there's never enough. There's always more that can be done. And it's, again, part of the balancing act of, how a school board member is going to allocate that budget, because the budget kind of is the priority list. And how do you provide the right resources? And to your point, for some, with children with autism, what works for one is not going to work for another. So this is a very interesting topic. And I think, we're seeing that there's more children that have autism now than, roll the clock back 20, 30 years ago. It's tough.
I had, just kind of piggybacking on that, a very dear friend of mine, who's, she's an instructional aide, a full-time instructional aide in one of the classrooms that I frequently subbed in. And she, knowing that I'm tightly connected to the foundation and their the fundraising pieces that they do every year, Garden Road would have an auction, and at the end of the auction, they would have a paddle raise, and they always targeted something very specific, like we need more books in the library, we need more Google Chromebooks. And she approached me and said, what do you think about me approaching the foundation and maybe getting a paddle raise or a portion of the paddle raise to support special ed, so that we could get more funding, more manipulatives for the kids in here? And I thought it was a beautiful idea. And I said, I'll have that conversation for you. So I came home and had a conversation with my husband, who was embarrassed, who he just didn't realize that they do these huge fundraisers, and all of the schools, we have the fun run as well. I chaired the fun run for 3 years, and one of the incentives with this particular company that a lot of the schools partner with to do their fun run is that 10% of all the funds raised in that classroom, that teacher gets to keep to put towards things that they need in their classroom. Mm. But the parents of the kids in the special ed classrooms, they don't really participate. It's unless they have other kids that are in the school that they're involved with. Usually it's gen ed kids. They removed. We definitely need to do a better job of trying to communicate. There's a lot of times there's a language barrier. So we were going to do a paddle raise. Obviously we didn't have any more fundraisers. We're just in the early conversations, but went to that was brought before the principal, who said, well, they have a little budget, but that the teachers weren't aware that there was a small little budget. It doesn't go very far, whatever it was, very, very small. But the point is that we were now, at least at Garden Road, the PTA and the foundation's eyes were open to all students. And it just took that one little conversation that the kids in the general ed classrooms, they're getting a lot more. And these kids are every bit a part of this school, this campus, as all the other, 95% of the kids, but this 5% needs to be just as included. And it was going to happen. Darn COVID. But we will get back there. So there's not enough funding to bring every need to the classrooms. But what I can say about, having been a student in Poway Unified, now a parent in Poway Unified, we have some of the most creative teachers out there that they can turn a few coins into gold. And they're going to make it happen. I have complete trust that some need a little bit more assistance with that, but most of them, it's amazing what they can do in a classroom.
I agree. Some of them are miracle workers, no doubt about it. I'm going to switch again. Just another topic, and you had touched on the issue of social justice. Are you familiar with? It was kind of like the hot buzz on some of the Facebook groups here locally about the Instagram account. I think it was called Black at PUSD, and there were these stories of students, and in some cases even teachers that were people of color and were explaining some of their struggles that they had. Just wonder if you got a chance to take a look at that, or if you had any thoughts on any of the race issues, as because it's such a hot topic right now.
It is. I have looked at some of those. I've had conversations with my daughter and some of her girlfriends with regards to respect, inclusivity.
Right on.
I have never, I've always lived my life with treating others as I want to be treated, that, I want to be the change in the world that I want to see. I need to make that happen. And one small voice, if you're not going to always like everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
respect is a completely different
Yes.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you can show respect, or, and humble yourself, we're gonna go a whole lot further. We've experienced some horrific challenges in our country's historical past, and
Mm-hmm.
we are definitely exposed to some very harrowing occurrences right now. Uh, and I can say that, where I stand, the where my family stands, where I all of my friends stand, I know that we're going to get through this, and it's going to be better. Um, I hate to hear that anyone is judged for the color of their skin, the origin, their family origin, their accent, how to pronounce their name. Um, that doesn't make us better. Um, you to victimize someone, to be a bully is, that's not a characteristic that uh, I've ever embraced. I do not tolerate it. If someone has a different viewpoint than me, that's okay. Um, but I would only hope that we could have a conversation on, why do you feel that way? Um, Please listen to me. This is why I feel this way. And can we meet each other in the middle, and at least respect one another's agree to disagree? Or maybe one of us just opened up the other person's eyes as to, this is going to be a better way for, and more people are going to get on board, because it's a peaceful approach,
Mm-hmm.
to bringing your community back together instead of segregating each other. Um, it's sad
I'm
that
curious to see what the school board ends up doing, because I know that they had issued a proclamation, condemning hate and
no place for
supporting
hate.
these issues of social justice. But it'll be interesting to see what policies come forward as a result of it. I think there's a lot of people that are curious. Um, yeah. Here's a fun question for you. If you had a magic wand and you could do anything, if you had unlimited time, unlimited money, what's the one thing you would do to make the school district better?
It would go along the lines of the social justice, or injustices that all of our kids and our staffers
Mm-hmm.
um, would feel accepted, because when you're afraid to go to school, or it makes learning hard.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
School should be your safe place, because sadly, for too many kids, home is not that safe place, and
Yeah.
um, it should be school. And if these are kids, and we can only hope that we do better with our kids than we did for ourselves.
Right on. Yeah, it's a big issue, and there are definitely I've heard numerous stories, and there's some things that we need to improve on in our community and in our schools as it pertains to social justice. So yeah, very interesting to see what comes forward from our superintendent, from our school board members. Hey, we've talked about so many serious things here, and education, social justice, funding, finance. Oh my gosh, special needs. Hey, what do you do when you're not, thinking about school board? I mean, what do you do for fun? Tell me a little bit about, what makes you smile and lights you up.
Anything and everything that has to do with my kids.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, of course.
From the moment we started, my daughter, 'cause I have an 8th grader and a 4th grader this year. When she started school at Garden Road, we were so excited that we might be able to start to volunteer and be a part of her life. I had some shifts at the university, which allowed me to work more at home. Because when she was in preschool, we needed a full-time preschool for her. And it was a hands-off anyway. It was a Montessori school, no parent volunteers. So when she started school, it just was like our worlds changed for the better. Right away, we got involved. I became the PTA secretary just a few months into the school year. I have been a part of almost every event at the school as a volunteer. My husband and I've always say I have like 3 full-time jobs. I'm obviously a mom. I have a full-time job at the university, and I'm a full-time volunteer. At the school, it's like it was never not enough. I could never say no to anything. I was the membership coordinator for the PTA. I've been a room parent or a co-room parent every single year. I've helped with anytime a teacher needed a volunteer. I checked the box on like everything, and my flexibility was anytime, as long as I have a little bit of a heads up, I just shift my workday around so that I could be in the classroom volunteering with these kids. I headed up the fun run at the school 3 years in a row. This year I am the VP of the PTA. I volunteer with the Little League. I've been a scorekeeper for the last couple of years, and that's a intensive focused position.
Yes, it is.
And it's all digital now. I wanted the book so I could shade in.
Using Game Changer when you do that one?
Yes. Using Game Changer.
I'm an old school guy. I like to have the book and the mechanical pencil and to keep score that way. It's kind of zen for me. So I'm glad you do it. I'm glad that you're a scorekeeper. I like that.
But I have to say that my pride is with my Girl Scout troop. I have
nice.
I have 11 daughters, and watching them grow over the years brings me as much joy as it does watching my own 2 kids. I love each of those girls as if they were my own. Nice. With each year, I've stepped back just a little bit more and allowed them to take the role of leader and wear that leadership hat. Empowering these young ladies is so the joy that I have, the pride that I have in watching them overcome things where they were once afraid to do, or anything from the challenge course up in the mountains to a zip line, to stepping in front of an audience of 50 people to give a presentation on how to sell cookies. We in 5th grade, we embarked on a big adventure, and they learned how to run a budget. They learned how to plan a trip. We went to San Francisco to participate in the National Bridging Ceremony. We almost left one girl behind at the airport because her ticket didn't print. And it was we're traveling with 14 people. I mean, I have a small family.
Yeah, it's an entourage, right?
The memories of that trip will last all of us a lifetime, and how much they grew. Coupled with, they earned their bronze award last year. They met with the principal at Garden Road. They said, we are passionate about this school. We want to leave our mark on this school as we leave here, knowing that so many of them had siblings, and the higher awards, you have to have a take action project. It has to be sustainable, and it builds with as you move up in the levels. But their bronze award, they chose to redo one of the gardens, and it wasn't just, okay, let's just clean it out and put some new plants in. It became a life cycle garden. They interviewed all of the teachers at the kindergarten and first grade levels to find out what types of things needed to go into that garden to help inspire the life cycle unit for those grade levels. They then had to present and gift the garden to the entire school. So they took the lead at a Friday flag ceremony, 10 of them, because one of them did not go to Garden Road, and presented to 600 people in the audience. They have, as there's not a person out there who has never heard of Girl Scout cookies. What is required every year for Girl Scout cookies is girls have to learn how to run their own business. So the last 2 years, my girls have taken it upon themselves to put together what's called a cookie rally, where girls from all over the county would sign up to come and attend, and they'd go from station to station to learn how to run their own business for 6 weeks, anywhere from 5 years old to middle schoolers that were new to the scouting. And I was in the background, kind of nudging them along, making sure that they were getting it done. And they always were like, Miss Cindy, we got it. We got it. So it was me having to step back and let them take ownership. And if there was mistakes, they were learning to grow from them and to fix it. And then we would debrief afterwards and say what went right, what went wrong, how are we going to do, what are we going to do differently the next time. I have had the distinct pleasure 2 years now of having some of my girls co-present with me on empowering young women to become tomorrow's leaders at a professional educators conference at the university. Awesome. Where I basically wrote the presentation, but they did the presenting. So they would go to sessions with me. And I had some colleagues of mine that I told them, I am bringing some young ladies with me. They were very, very accommodating, exciting. And so that was the first year. Then the second year, I didn't bring them. And I had professors from all over the place coming to me and wanting to know, where are my girls? I'm like, well, I didn't bring them this year. Well, you better bring them next year. So this is an annual conference that happens in October. And so last year I had to have the girls come with me, and I had several more people. When I gave them, I put it in my notes that the girls will be presenting. It was almost a full house because they wanted to hear from the girls, and they were so encouraging, bring their level, these girls, these young ladies who were, 11 and 12 years old, that level of confidence that not only are they being exposed to the university, they're working on their public speaking. They're talking to a group of adults of, these are all individuals that have PhDs and MDs and teach from all over the place, that they're doing it. And this year they are now starting to work on their silver. I have so many different girls approaching it in different ways, from as I mentioned, the sensory boards to wanting to build a library in a domestic violence shelter. I have another young lady who is really wanting to either do her silver or her gold on creating a mural that embraces the LGBTQ, Black lives.
Cool.
where, love is love is love, basically.
Right on.
And she's still in the very, very early planning stages of that. And it might be more realistic for gold and not silver, because she's running out of time with the silver. But the fact that, I feel so blessed that I get to be a part of these young ladies' journeys as I watch them open their eyes, take on new challenges. We have more meetings now than we ever had. It was when they started middle school, it came down to once a month, because they're so busy in their day-to-day lives that we didn't have time to meet. But now they're all home, and so we meet every week now. We call them our Troop Connects, our weekly connections, and they tell me what's going on in the world. We're earning badges. We're doing skits in front of each other. Parents are entertained. We're learning to evolve with this online platform because we don't have a choice right now.
Girl Scout meetings over Zoom. That's pretty interesting. Right?
Right. And they're not letting this obstacle, deter them from what they need to do to move them forward and to continue to empower them with leadership skills. So that's definitely they're my pride and joy.
I can tell that really lights you up. I think that's cool. Just talking about Girl Scouts and all the things you're doing as a volunteer in the community. Right on. Wow. We've covered, like we say, we've covered so much ground here. We've been going, probably about an hour and a half. How can people get a hold of you, your website, and you're also running, is it District E, right? And that's like South Poway and Sabre Springs, roughly, isn't it?
Yes. So all the way along the Poway Road corridor, from Garden Road down to Creekside, including Poway Road, Pomerado, Meadowbrook, and Morning Creek is kind of on the line, falling between districts, but obviously a percentage of the voters are on the Trustee E side. My website is live, and it's just cindysytsma.com.
Okay. And just so for our listeners and viewers, and how do you spell your name, just so we can get it right?
Right. So I don't know if I move.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's right there on view, but some of our people are listening to this on iTunes,
Right.
So Cindy, Cindy, and then thanks for moving around there. Sytsma.com. CindySytsma.com is where they can get more information. They can learn, they can volunteer, they can donate, they can get involved in your campaign, or reach out and ask you questions, right?
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Okay. Well, I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
The election isn't for like 3 months, but it's going to start getting hot and heavy here in the campaign season. But through the COVID era, it's going to be kind of different. So, when do the absentee ballots usually come out? Pretty early.
It's the first of, I believe it's the 1st of October they go out.
And over half, or maybe even close to 2/3 of the people, I think, vote by mail, which is a whole other separate thing, being discussed at the national level. But so that tightens up your window even more for the campaign season, because people are going to be filling out ballots in early October. So really, it's 2 months left in the campaign season. So hopefully you're out there and getting your message out as best you can.
Oh yeah. Yep. We've got our plan, and I've got my strong circle of friends who have come forward and said they're there to support me in any which way. And it's a blessing to know that I have people that are willing to do this for me. So
right on. Well, Cindy, thank you again for joining me, and best of luck in your campaign.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.